Martha Jane Calloway's knees hit the frozen mud of Silver Ridge, Wyoming. Her 3 children collapsed beside her, Will clutching Henry Lucy's small body, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. The man towering above them hadn't moved. Josiah Mercer, the rancher who'd sent away every woman in 3 counties without a second glance. Martha looked up at him through cracked lips in desperation. "Please, I'll work for nothing. Just don't let my children die in this cold." His eyes gray as the winter sky gave her nothing. His answer would save them or end them. Stay with us until the very end. Subscribe now and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far Martha's story travels. Tutte, Mama Henry won't wake up. Will's voice cut through the rattling stagecoach like a knife. Martha Jane Calloway's heart stopped. She lunged across the cramped compartment, shoving aside the threadbare blanket they'd been sharing for warmth. Henry lay slumped against his brother's shoulder. 6 years old, lips tinged blue, eyes closed. "Henry." Martha grabbed his face, slapped his cheeks lightly. "Henry? Baby, open your eyes." Nothing. "Henry?" His eyelids fluttered, a weak cough. Then his eyes opened unfocused and glassy. "Mama, I'm so cold." Martha pulled him against her chest, rubbing his arms, his back, anything to generate heat. Her hands were shaking. When had they started shaking? "Will, give me your coat." "But Mama, now." Will stripped off his worn jacket without another word. Martha wrapped it around Henry, layering it over her own shawl, already covering his thin body. Lucy whimpered from the corner, 4 years old, pressed against the coach wall, making herself as small as possible. Her blonde hair matted, her dress, the only one she owned, stained from weeks of travel. "Mama, are we gonna die?" The question hit Martha like a fist. She looked at her daughter's face, at Will's hollow cheeks, at Henry's blue lips slowly returning to something like color. 3 weeks on this stagecoach. 3 weeks of rationed food and freezing nights, and watching her children fade like candles running out of wick. "No, baby?" Martha's voice came out steady. How she didn't know. "We're not gonna die. We're almost there." "Where's their—" Martha didn't have an answer. She'd spent the last of their money on these tickets, fled Missouri with nothing but rumors. Montana needs people. Wyoming has work. Maybe there's a chance. Maybe was all she had left. The stagecoach lurched to a stop. "Silver Ridge," the driver hollered. "End of the line." Martha moved before she could think. She grabbed Lucy with one arm, pulled Henry up with the other. "We'll stay close." She kicked the door open and half fell into the frozen street. Cold. Cold like she'd never felt. Cold that sliced through her thin coat and found her bones and made her gasp for air that burned going down. Martha stumbled, nearly dropped Lucy. Will caught her arm, steadied her. "I got you, Mama." 10 years old. Acting 40. Carrying weight no child should carry because his father was dead and someone had to be the man. Martha hated what she'd made him become. She hated more that she couldn't change it. The general store. She spotted it across the street. "We need to get inside." They moved together, 4 bodies pressed close, sharing what little warmth they had. Lucy's arms wrapped around Martha's neck so tight it hurt to breathe. Henry stumbled with every step, Will half carrying him. The bell above the store door jangled as Martha pushed through. Warmth hit her like a physical force. A potbelly stove in the corner. Heat radiating in waves. Lucy made a sound something between a sob and a sigh, and pressed her face deeper into Martha's shoulder. "Help you." The woman behind the counter had iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Her gaze swept over them, the patched clothes, the hollow faces, the desperation clinging to them like a smell. Martha knew what she saw. Charity case, burden, problem. She'd seen that look in 4 towns already. "I need work." Martha kept her voice level. "Boarding for myself and my children. I can cook, clean, mend anything you need done. You got money. Not much. Then I can't help you. Please. There has to be someone hiring. Anyone. The woman H. Dawson. Her name tag read, shook her head slowly. Winter's coming hard and it's coming fast. Every ranch in 50 miles already has their help hired on. She paused, something flickering across her face. Nobody's looking for... She stopped herself. For what? Martha asked. Nobody's looking for what? A woman with 3 mouths to feed. The words landed like stones. Will's hand found Martha's. Squeezed. She squeezed back. I understand. Martha heard her own voice from somewhere far away. Is there at least somewhere we can get warm, just for an hour? Then we'll move on. Mrs. Dawson's face softened. Just barely. Look, I wish I could help. I truly do. But this town doesn't have resources to... The door opened behind them. Cold air rushed in, and with it a presence that seemed to fill the entire store. Martha turned. The man stood in the doorway like he'd been carved from the mountains behind him. Tall, broad, dark hair beneath a weather-beaten hat, a beard trimmed close to a jaw that looked like it had never learned to smile. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Gray, cold, empty. The eyes of a man who'd stopped feeling a long time ago. He looked at Martha, looked through her, then dismissed her entirely and walked to the counter. Mercer. Mrs. Dawson's voice shifted. Careful now. Almost nervous. Wasn't expecting you today. Need supplies. His voice was rough with disuse, like a tool left to rust. Wire, nails, coffee, that's all. He moved past Martha like she wasn't there, like her children weren't there, like they were ghosts already. Something broke inside her, or maybe something finally hardened. Wait. The word came out before she could stop it. He paused, didn't turn, just stopped. Are you hiring? Silence. 1 heartbeat. 2, 3. No. He still hadn't turned around. I can work. Martha stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. She wouldn't let it. Any work. I'm not asking for charity, just a chance to earn shelter for my children. Now he turned. Those gray eyes swept over her, over Will standing rigid at her side, over Henry swaying on his feet, over Lucy's face pressed against her neck. I said no. I heard you. Then we're done. We're not. Something shifted in his expression, not anger exactly, more like confusion, like he wasn't used to people pushing back. Ma'am, my children haven't eaten a real meal in 6 days. Martha's voice stayed level, but something raw bled through. My son almost died of cold on that stagecoach an hour ago. My daughter asked me if we were going to die, and I couldn't tell her no with any certainty. She stepped closer, close enough to see the lines around his eyes, the old grief buried beneath the emptiness. I'm not asking you to save us. I'm asking you to let us work for the right to save ourselves. The store had gone silent. Mrs. Dawson stood frozen behind the counter. Even Lucy had stopped whimpering. Josiah Mercer stared at Martha for a long moment. Then his gaze dropped to Henry. The boy had started shaking again. His lips were losing color. His eyes couldn't quite focus. Your boy. Mercer's voice changed. Something cracked beneath the ice. He's sick. He's cold. And hungry. And he'll be fine once I can get him somewhere warm. He needs a doctor. He needs food and shelter. I can handle the rest. Mercer studied her face, searching for something. Martha didn't know what. What's your name? Martha Jane Calloway. This is Will, Henry, and Lucy. Your husband. Dead. 2 years now. And you came here alone with 3 children. I came here because I had nowhere else to go. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Recognition, like looking into a mirror and seeing your own desperation staring back. I don't run a charity, he said. I'm not asking for one. Work on my ranch is hard, harder than anything you've done. I've buried a husband and kept 3 children alive through poverty that would have broken most men. Try me." The challenge hung in the air. Mrs. Dawson made a small sound. Shock, maybe, or admiration. Mercer's jaw tightened. His hands, large scarred from years of labor, curled at his sides. Then he spoke. "My ranch is 8 miles north. You work from before dawn until after dark. You do what needs doing without complaint. The children stay out of the way." Martha's heart hammered against her ribs. "And if it doesn't work, you leave come spring. No arguments, no negotiations. You just go." "Understood." "Be ready at first light. I'll bring a wagon." He turned back to Mrs. Dawson. "Add blankets to my order, and whatever food she needs to get through tonight." Then he paid, collected his supplies, and walked out without another word. The door closed behind him. Martha stood in the sudden silence, her legs threatening to give way beneath her. "Well," Mrs. Dawson's voice was hushed. "In 30 years, I've never seen Josiah Mercer agree to anything." "What do you mean?" "That man's turned away every woman in 3 counties, good women, capable women. They've offered him everything short of selling their souls, and he's sent them all packing." "Then why did he say yes to me?" Mrs. Dawson looked at her, really looked, with something like wonder. "I don't know. But whatever you said to him, whatever he saw in you, you might just be the first person to crack that wall in 8 years. What happened 8 years ago?" "His wife died." Mrs. Dawson's voice softened. "Rebecca. Fever took her in the dead of winter. He buried her himself because the ground was too frozen for anyone else to help dig. After that," she shook her head, "he stopped being a person and started being a ghost." Martha absorbed this. A man who'd buried his wife alone, who'd shut himself off from the world, who'd said no to everyone, until tonight. "Why, is there somewhere we can stay?" Martha asked. "Until morning. There's a storeroom in back. It ain't much, but it's warm." Mrs. Dawson was already gathering the food Mercer had paid for. "No charge. And honey, whatever happens out on that ranch, you be careful. That man isn't cruel, but he's broken, and broken things sometimes cut deepest." The storeroom was barely 10 feet square. 1 cot, a wash basin. A window so frosted over it might as well have been a wall. But it was warm. And after 3 weeks of frozen stagecoach seats and sleeping in stations warm, felt like heaven. Martha got the children settled first. Will and Henry on the cot, Lucy squeezed between them. She piled every coat and blanket over their bodies until they looked like 1 lump instead of 3. "Eat first." She unwrapped the food Mrs. Dawson had given her. Bread, dried beef, cheese, apples, more food than they'd seen in weeks. Henry's eyes went wide. "All of this for us. All of it, slowly now. You'll get sick if you eat too fast." She watched them eat, watched the color return to their cheeks, watched Henry's hand stop shaking, watched Lucy actually smile for the first time in days. This was why she'd kept going, not for herself, never for herself. For them. "Mama," Will's voice was quiet, the serious one, the one who saw too much. "That man at the store, do you trust him?" Martha considered the question. Did she trust Josiah Mercer? No. She didn't know him. Couldn't trust someone she didn't know. But she'd seen something in his eyes when he looked at Henry. Something that cracked through the ice. "I think he's a man who lost something important," she said finally. "And I think lost people sometimes understand other lost people." "That's not an answer." "It's the best one I have." Will chewed on this, then nodded slowly. "I'll watch him," he said. "Make sure he doesn't hurt you or the others." "Will." "I'm the man now, Mama. Pa said so before he died. He said to take care of you. Martha's throat tightened. Samuel, her husband. Dead, 2 years now, buried in a grave she'd never see again. He'd been a good man. Not always a smart one. The debts he'd left proved that, but good. Kind. He'd loved his children with everything he had, and he'd put a burden on Will that no 10-year-old should carry. Your father would be proud of you, Martha said softly. But you don't have to be the man yet. You can just be a boy a little while longer. No, I can't. Will's voice held no self-pity, just fact. But that's okay, Mama. I don't mind. He did mind. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, in the way his shoulders stayed tense even when he slept. But he'd never admit it. Never complain. Her brave, broken boy. Martha kissed his forehead. Sleep now. Tomorrow's going to be hard. She sat on the floor after they fell asleep, her back against the wall, her eyes on the frosted window, thinking. Josiah Mercer. A name she hadn't known existed until 2 hours ago. Now her children's survival depended on him. What had he seen in her? Why had he said yes? I came here because I had nowhere else to go. Maybe that was it. Maybe he recognized the desperation. Maybe he'd felt it himself once standing in some other frozen town, begging some other stranger for a chance. Or maybe he just needed help badly enough to take a risk on a woman with 3 starving children. It didn't matter why. What mattered was tomorrow. Martha closed her eyes and tried to rest. But sleep wouldn't come. It hadn't come properly in weeks. Her mind kept racing, planning, calculating, worrying. What if the ranch was worse than the road? What if Mercer changed his mind? What if Henry's cough got worse? What if? The thoughts spiraled until she wanted to scream. Instead, she pressed her hand against her chest, felt her heart beating, and focused on that. Still alive, still fighting. Tomorrow would come. She'd face it then. She'd face it like she'd faced everything else. Alone. Dawn broke gray and bitter. Martha woke before light washed the sleep from the children's faces, did what she could to make them presentable. Not much she could do. Will's shirt was missing 2 buttons. Henry's boots had holes in both soles. Lucy's coat was more patches than original fabric. But they were clean. They were alive. It would have to be enough. Mama, I'm scared. Lucy's whisper came as Martha braided her hair. I know, baby. What if the man is mean? Then we'll leave. What if he hurts us? Martha turned Lucy to face her, looked into those big blue eyes, Samuel's eyes, and made her voice as steady as stone. No one is going to hurt you. Not while I'm breathing. Do you understand? Lucy nodded slowly. I need you to be brave today. Can you do that? Another nod. Good girl. Henry sat on the edge of the cot, still looking pale, but better than yesterday. His cough had settled during the night. The food and warmth had done their work. I can help, he said suddenly. Help with what? Whatever you need. I'm small, but I'm strong. Papa said so. His chin lifted. I can carry things. And I'm good with animals. Remember the chickens back home? I always got the most eggs. Martha's heart cracked a little. Home. A word that meant nothing now. A place they'd never see again. I remember, she said softly. You were the best egg collector in all of Missouri. Henry beamed, a real smile, the first one in weeks. Will stood by the door, already wearing his coat, his face set in that too serious expression. Wagon's coming, he said. I can hear it. Martha took a breath, let it out slowly. All right, let's go. The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the general store, 2 heavy draft horses' breath steaming in the cold. Josiah Mercer on the seat, reins loose in his hands, face unreadable beneath his hat. He didn't greet them, didn't smile, just waited. "Get in the back," Martha told the children. "Stay together for warmth." She helped them up, made sure they were settled among the supply crates and grain sacks. Then she climbed up beside Mercer on the seat. He glanced at her. Surprise flickered briefly across his face. "Most people ride in back." "I'm not most people." Martha settled herself on the hard wooden seat. "And I want to see where we're going." For a moment, something that might have been respect crossed his features. Then it was gone. He clicked his tongue, and the horses moved. They rode in silence. The town fell away within minutes. Open land stretched in every direction, rolling hills blanketed in snow stands of pine trees huddled against the cold mountains rising in the distance like sleeping giants. Beautiful, in a harsh, unforgiving way. The kind of beauty that could kill you if you weren't careful. 8 miles, you said. Martha kept her eyes forward. That's far from town. Far enough. On purpose. Yes. Why? He didn't answer. They rode on. The horses' hooves crunched through the frozen ground. Wind cut across the open plains, finding every gap in Martha's coat. She didn't complain, didn't shiver. She'd spent too long being cold to notice it anymore. Your boy. Mercer's voice broke the silence so suddenly, Martha flinched. The sick one. How long has he been coughing? A week, maybe more. You have medicine? No. His jaw tightened. I have some at the ranch. Old stuff, but it works. Martha turned to look at him. His profile was hard, rigid, but there was something else there too. Something beneath the stone. Why do you care? The question came out sharper than she intended. He didn't answer immediately, just kept his eyes on the road ahead, hands steady on the reins. I don't care. His voice was flat. But sick people can't work. And you promised to work. It was a lie. Martha could hear it in the way his voice tightened. See it in the way his grip shifted on the leather. He cared, for whatever reason. She didn't push. The ranch appeared gradually. First the fence-line split rail stretching farther than Martha could see. Then, cattle huddled in groups against the cold, their breath making clouds in the still air. Then buildings, a barn larger than she'd expected, weathered but solid. The kind of building that had seen decades of storms and stood through them all. A chicken coop, a woodshed stacked high with split logs, a small stable attached to the main barn, and finally, the house. Martha stared. It was small. Single-story log construction with a porch wrapping around the front. Smoke curled from the chimney, promising warmth inside. Everything about it was functional, practical, built to last rather than impress. But it was more than that. It was a home. Or it had been once. This is it. Mercer pulled the wagon to a stop. Get the children inside. I'll see to the horses. He climbed down and walked toward the barn without looking back. Martha sat for a moment staring at the house. Her children's faces appeared over the wagon's edge. Mama. Will's voice was cautious. Is this it? This is it. It's small. It's warm. Lucy peeked out her eyes wide. It looks nice. Nicer than the stagecoach. Henry said nothing. Just stared at the house with an expression Martha couldn't read. Come on. She climbed down, helped them out of the wagon. Let's see our new home. The inside stopped her cold. Not because it was bad, because it was empty. A main room with a stone fireplace, a table with 4 chairs, a kitchen area with a cast-iron stove radiating blessed heat, 2 doors leading to other rooms, a rifle mounted above the fireplace, a clock on the mantel, and nothing else. No decorations, no photographs, no signs that anyone actually lived here except the basics of survival. Except the books. Martha noticed them immediately. A shelf beside the fireplace filled with more volumes than she'd seen since leaving Missouri. History, poetry, novels. A Bible with worn edges. "There's books." Henry's voice held wonder. "Mama, look at all the books. I see them, baby." "Can I read one?" "We'll ask first." The front door opened. Mercer stepped inside, stomping snow from his boots. "Your room's through there." He gestured to one of the doors. "Mine's the other one. Don't go in it." Martha nodded. "Understood." Kitchen stocked. "You can make breakfast while I show your boy the barn." "Which boy?" Mercer's gaze went to Will. Something passed between them. Assessment, maybe. Sizing each other up. "The older one, if he's willing to learn." Will straightened. His shoulders went back. That too serious expression hardened into something like determination. "I'm willing." "Then come on. Work doesn't wait." They left together, the silent rancher and the boy trying too hard to be a man. Martha watched them go. Then she turned to face the kitchen and got to work. The stove was temperamental. Martha learned this the hard way. Her first batch of biscuits came out black, on the bottom barely cooked on top. The damper stuck. The heat ran uneven. The whole thing seemed to have a personality of its own. But she adjusted. She always adjusted. By the time footsteps approached from outside, she had coffee made, bacon-fried eggs scrambled, and biscuits that were actually edible. The door opened. Mercer and Will came in together, both red-cheeked from cold. But Will looked different. His eyes were brighter. His shoulders weren't quite so hunched, and when he looked at Martha, there was something new in his face. Hope. "He showed me the horses." Will said the words tumbling out faster than she'd heard him speak in months. "They're huge, Mama. And the barn has a loft, and there are chickens, and he said I can help feed them tomorrow, and—" "Breathe, Will." He stopped, flushed, but the light didn't leave his eyes. Martha looked at Mercer. He stood by the door, hanging up his coat, acting like he hadn't just given her son the first real joy he'd felt in 2 years. "Thank you," she said quietly. He didn't acknowledge it, just moved to the table and sat down. "Smells good. It's simple, but filling." She served the food. Watched her children eat, really eat for the first time in weeks. Henry had seconds. Lucy cleaned her plate. Even Will, who usually ate like a bird, asked for more bacon. Mercer ate in silence. But she noticed he watched the children, watched their faces. Something unreadable in his expression. When breakfast was done, he stood. "There's mending in my room. Clothes that need fixing. Take them to your room to work on." Martha nodded. "After that, the house needs cleaning, proper cleaning. Hasn't been done in—" He stopped. Swallowed. A while. 8 years, Martha thought. 8 years since his wife died. 8 years of living alone in this house, full of ghosts. "I'll take care of it," she said. He nodded once, sharp, then turned to Will. "You ready for more work?" Will jumped up so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. "Yes, sir." Something flickered across Mercer's face. Pain, maybe. Or memory. "Don't call me sir. Josiah's fine." Then they were gone again. Martha stood in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and the smell of bacon, and felt something she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. Safety. It wasn't trust. Not yet. She didn't know this man didn't know what he was capable of. But for the first time in 2 years, she wasn't running. For the first time in 2 years, she had a place to stand. It would have to be enough. The days fell into rhythms. Martha learned the house like she'd learned everything else in her life, through work and observation and sheer stubborn refusal to fail. The stove needed the damper adjusted every hour. The floors creaked in 3 specific places. The kitchen pump stuck if you didn't prime it just right. The windows leaked cold air that no amount of rags could completely stop. She learned Josiah Mercer too. Learned that he woke before dawn and started the fire before anyone else stirred. Learned that he took his coffee black and strong, no sugar. Learned that he answered questions with as few words as possible, and sometimes didn't answer at all. Learned that he watched her children when he thought no one was looking. Not with suspicion, not with resentment, with something almost like hunger, like a starving man watching others eat. Will followed him everywhere. The boy who'd been so closed off, so careful, started opening like a flower toward sun. He asked questions constantly about the horses, about the cattle, about how things worked and why. And Josiah answered, every single time. Patient, thorough, teaching without condescension. He's good with him. Martha said it aloud one afternoon, watching through the window as Josiah showed Will how to mend a fence. Who? Lucy looked up from the dough she was helping knead. Mr. Mercer, with your brother. He's nice. Lucy considered this with the gravity only a 4-year-old could muster. Quiet nice, not loud nice like Papa was. Martha's throat tightened. That's a good way to put it, baby. Henry was different. He didn't follow Josiah the way Will did. Instead, he'd found the chickens. Every morning, before Martha even called him for breakfast, Henry was in the coop, talking to the hens, collecting eggs, making friends with a particular speckled hen he'd named Biscuit. She likes me best, he told Martha seriously one evening. She lets me pick her up. She doesn't let anyone else do that. Maybe you have a gift with animals. Papa said I did. Henry's face clouded briefly. He said I'd make a good farmer someday. Martha pulled him close, pressed a kiss to the top of his head. Your papa was right. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The house transformed under Martha's hands, floors scrubbed until they gleamed, windows washed, clothes mended, kitchen organized until everything had its proper place. And slowly, so slowly, she almost didn't notice it. The house started feeling less like a museum and more like a home. Then came the night that changed everything. Martha woke to screaming. Not human screaming. Wind. Wind that howled against the house like a living thing, rattling windows, finding every crack and gap and filling them with cold. She was out of bed before she fully woke, in the main room before she could think. Josiah stood at the window, fully dressed, staring out at something that looked like the end of the world. What's happening? He turned. His face was grim. Blizzard. Bad one. Came in faster than I expected. He grabbed his coat from the hook. Fence is down in the north pasture. The cattle, they'll freeze. Yes. Martha didn't hesitate. I'm coming with you. No. You can't do this alone. You'll die out there. So will you. She was already pulling on her boots. And if the cattle die, we all die anyway. This isn't about heroics, it's about survival. He stared at her, that gray gaze searching her face for something. Whatever he found made him nod. Get dressed. Warmest things you have. 2 minutes. Martha was ready in 1. The storm was like nothing she'd ever experienced. Wind that knocked her sideways. Snow that fell so thick she couldn't see her hand in front of her face. Cold that bit through her borrowed coat and found her bones within seconds. She stayed close to Josiah, followed his dark shape through the white nightmare, trusted him to know the way when she couldn't see anything. The barn loomed out of the snow like a ghost. Inside they saddled horses with fingers already going numb. Josiah handed her a coil of rope. Stay behind me. Follow exactly where I go. If you lose sight of me, follow the fence line back. Don't try to find me. Don't try to be brave. Just survive. Understand? Martha understood. I understand. They rode out into hell. Time stopped meaning anything. There was only the horse beneath her, the shape of Josiah ahead, the endless assault of wind and snow and cold. Her fingers went numb first, then her face. Then something deeper, a core coldness that settled into her chest and made every breath a battle. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The cattle appeared like phantoms, dark shapes huddled against a broken section of fence, lowing in distress. Martha dismounted. Her legs nearly gave out, but she forced them to hold. Josiah was already working hammering boards, stringing wire, his movements sharp and economical despite the cold. Martha helped, held boards while he nailed them, passed him wire, helped shove confused cattle back from the breach. She didn't feel her hands anymore. Didn't feel much of anything except the desperate need to keep moving, keep working, keep going. When the fence finally held, when the last cow was turned back toward shelter, Josiah grabbed her arm. She couldn't see his face through the snow, couldn't hear his voice over the wind, but she felt his hand, solid, real, alive. They rode back. In the barn, Martha's legs finally failed her. She slid off the horse and crumpled into the straw, unable to stand, barely able to breathe. Josiah was there, arms around her, lifting her up. "Can you walk?" Her voice came out a croak. "I don't know. Try." She tried. Her legs were wooden, unresponsive, but she forced them to move. 1 step. 2. Josiah kept his arm around her waist, took most of her weight, got her inside. The house was warm. Will had kept the fire blazing. Henry and Lucy were curled together on the rug asleep. "Sit." Josiah guided her to the chair by the fireplace. "I'll get coffee." Martha sat. Let the heat wash over her. Felt her fingers start to burn as blood returned to them. Pain. But good pain. Living pain. Will appeared in the bedroom doorway. His face was white. "Mama." "I'm all right, sweetheart. I heard the storm, and you were gone, and I thought—" His voice broke. Martha held out her arms. Will crossed the room in 2 steps and threw himself against her, holding on like he'd never let go. "I'm here," she murmured into his hair. "I'm here. I came back." "Don't do that again." His voice was fierce, terrified. "Don't ever do that again." "I can't promise that." "Why not?" "Because sometimes the things worth protecting are worth risking everything for." Josiah returned with coffee. Saw them holding each other. Stopped. Something crossed his face. Pain, maybe, or longing. Then it was gone, and he handed Martha the cup with careful formality. "Drink. You'll feel better." Martha took it, wrapped her frozen fingers around the warmth. "Thank you." "You didn't quit." His voice was rough. "Out there, you didn't quit." Was that in doubt? Most people would have stayed inside where it was safe. Martha held his gaze. "I told you before, Mr. Mercer. I'm not most people." Something shifted in his expression. The wall cracked. Just a little. "No," he said quietly. "You're definitely not." He sat down across from her. They drank coffee in silence while the storm raged outside, and Will slowly relaxed against Martha's side. And somewhere in that silence, something changed. Not words, nothing as simple as words, just recognition. 2 people who'd stood against something that could have killed them. Neither had broken. That meant something. Martha wasn't sure what yet, but she intended to find out. The storm broke 3 days later. Martha stood on the porch at dawn, watching the sun turn the snow-covered world into a field of diamonds. Behind her, she could hear the children stirring. Henry talking to Lucy about Biscuit the chicken. Will asking Josiah something about the horses. Normal sounds, family sounds. Strange how quickly abnormal could become normal. Strange how quickly strangers could become something more. "Penny for your thoughts." Josiah's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. "Just thinking about how different things look in daylight. The storm, Everything. He moved to stand beside her, not touching but close. Close enough that she could feel his warmth in the cold air. "You saved my cattle," he said. "Probably saved the ranch. I wouldn't have been able to do it alone." "Is that a thank you?" "It's a fact." Martha smiled slightly. "You're not good at thank yous, are you?" "No." He paused. "But I'm trying." They stood in silence, watching the sun rise higher, watching their breath make clouds in the cold air. "Why did you say yes?" Martha asked finally. "That day in the store. Everyone says you turn everyone away. Why not me?" Josiah was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, like he was letting her see something he usually kept hidden. "Because you reminded me of someone." "Your wife?" "No." He shook his head slowly. "Myself. 20 years ago. Standing in another town asking another stranger for a chance." He paused. "Someone gave me one. A rancher named Caleb Winslow. He took me in when I had nothing. Taught me everything. Left me this place when he died." "So you're paying it forward?" "Something like that." Martha turned to look at him. Really look. The hard lines of his face, the gray eyes that weren't quite as cold as they'd been 3 weeks ago. The way his hands hung at his sides, strong hands, capable hands, hands that could be gentle when they needed to be. "Will looks up to you," she said. "Henry's happier than he's been since his father died. Lucy isn't scared anymore. And you?" The question surprised her. "What about me? Are you still scared?" Martha considered this. Considered him. "Less than I was." Something like relief flickered across his features. "Good." He cleared his throat. "I should check the fences, make sure last night didn't bring any more down." He started to turn away. "Josiah." He stopped, looked back. Martha held his gaze. "Thank you for giving us a chance." For a moment he just looked at her. Then slowly the corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but closer than anything she'd seen from him before. "You're welcome, Mrs. Calloway." Then he was gone, walking toward the barn, and Martha stood on the porch watching him go, feeling something she hadn't let herself feel in 2 long years. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, terrifying hope. She let herself feel it anyway. Chatuai. The weeks after the storm settled into something Martha hadn't expected. Peace. Not the fragile, waiting for disaster kind of peace she'd known in Missouri. Something steadier. Something that felt almost like it might last. She woke each morning before dawn, started the fire, put coffee on. By the time Josiah emerged from his room, the kitchen was warm and breakfast was cooking. They'd exchange a nod, nothing more, and he'd take his coffee to the porch while she finished preparing the meal. Small rituals, simple patterns, the bones of something being built. Will had transformed. The boy who'd arrived hollow-eyed and hunched now stood straighter, talked more, laughed occasionally. He followed Josiah everywhere, absorbing knowledge like dry earth drinking rain. "He asked me about branding today." Will told Martha one evening, his voice bright with excitement. "Said come spring he'll teach me how to do it proper. Said I've got steady hands." Martha looked at her son's face, really looked, and saw something she'd feared was gone forever. Joy. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." "Mama, do you think—" Will hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "Do you think Papa would mind that I'm learning from someone else?" The question hit Martha harder than she expected. She set down the shirt she'd been mending and pulled Will close. "Your papa would be proud," she said firmly. "He'd be proud that you're learning, that you're growing, that you're becoming the man he always knew you could be. He wouldn't mind at all." "You promise?" "I promise." Will nodded slowly, then quieter. "I still miss him, but it doesn't hurt as much as it used to. Is that bad?" No, baby. That's healing. That's exactly what it's supposed to feel like. Henry had found his place too. The chickens had become his domain. He collected eggs each morning with the seriousness of a surgeon, reported to Martha about each hen's mood and productivity, and had lengthy conversations with Biscuit that he refused to share with anyone else. "She tells me secrets," he explained when Lucy asked. "I can't repeat them. That would be rude." Lucy herself had bloomed in unexpected ways. The fearful, clinging child who'd arrived at the ranch had started venturing out, first to the porch, then to the barn, then wherever her curiosity led her. And increasingly, that curiosity led her to Josiah. Martha first noticed it on a Tuesday afternoon. She was scrubbing the kitchen floor when she heard Lucy's voice drifting through the window. "Why do you talk to the horses?" Josiah's response was too low to hear. "But they can't talk back," Lucy pressed. "That's silly." A pause. Then Josiah's voice slightly louder. "Sometimes the best listeners are the ones who can't talk back. They just hear. No judgment, no advice. Just hear." "Oh." Lucy considered this. "Like when Mama holds me and doesn't say anything." "Something like that. Do the horses like you?" "I reckon they tolerate me." "What's tolerate mean?" "It means they put up with me even when I'm difficult." "Are you difficult?" A long pause. Then so quiet, Martha barely caught it. "Sometimes." "Yes." Martha set down her brush and moved to the window. Josiah sat on an overturned bucket outside the barn, a harness in his hands that he was supposedly repairing. Lucy stood beside him, close enough that her small hand rested on his knee. She'd never seen her daughter touch him before. She'd never seen Josiah allow anyone to touch him. "I think the horses like you," Lucy said decisively. "And Biscuit likes you too. Henry said so." "Did he now?" "Uh-huh. He said you're quiet, but you're not mean. He said that's the best kind of person." Josiah's hands stilled on the harness. "Your brother's a smart boy." "I know." Lucy's tone was matter-of-fact. "Mama says he gets it from Papa. But Will says I'm smart too, just different smart." "What kind of smart are you? Heart smart?" Lucy tapped her chest. "I know when people are sad, even when they pretend they're not." She tilted her head, studying Josiah's face. "You're sad a lot, but you're getting less sad. I can tell." Martha held her breath. Josiah was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "You might be the smartest person I've ever met, Lucy Calloway." Lucy beamed. "Mama says that too, but I think she's just being nice." "I'm not being nice. I mean it." "Oh." Lucy processed this. Then, "Can I help you fix the harness?" "Do you know anything about harnesses?" "No, but I can learn. Will says you're a good teacher." Another long pause. Then Josiah shifted over on the bucket-making room. "Sit here. I'll show you how it works." Lucy scrambled up beside him, and Martha watched them through the window. The broken man and the 4-year-old girl heads bent together over a piece of leather and felt something crack open in her chest. She turned back to her scrubbing and didn't try to name what she was feeling. Some things were too fragile for words. That night, after the children were asleep, Martha found herself unable to settle. The house was quiet, the fire burning low, and restlessness drove her to the main room, where she found Josiah at the table, with a ledger open before him. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He looked up. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe at finding her there. "Accounts." He gestured at the ledger. "Trying to figure how we'll make it through to spring." "We..." The word hung between them. Josiah's jaw tightened. "The ranch. How the ranch will make it." Martha moved closer, looking at the numbers spread across the page. She could read unusual enough for a woman of her station, but more than that, she understood what she was seeing. "You're short." "Some?" "More than some." She traced a column with her finger. "Feed costs are too high. And you're planning for repairs that should have been done last summer. He stared at her. You can read ledgers. I can read most things. My mother was a teacher before she married. She taught me everything she knew. Martha pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. Show me the rest. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Close the ledger shut her out retreat behind those walls he'd built so carefully. Instead, he turned the book toward her. Here. And here. He pointed to 2 columns. Those are the problems. Not enough cattle survived last winter, and the ones that did aren't fetching good prices at market. Martha studied the numbers, her mind working through possibilities. What about the south pasture you mentioned? It needs clearing. Been meaning to get to it for 2 years. Never had the hands. You have hands now. Will's young, but he works hard. I can help too once the spring thaw comes. Josiah shook his head. That's not women's work. I didn't realize survival had a gender. Martha met his eyes evenly. I've dug ditches, Mr. Mercer. I've hauled water and chopped wood and done everything a man can do because there was no man to do it. If clearing a pasture is what keeps this ranch alive, then I'll clear it. He stared at her for a long moment. You're serious. I'm always serious about keeping my children fed. Something shifted in his expression. The wall cracked a little wider. Josiah, he said quietly. What? You keep calling me Mr. Mercer. My name's Josiah. You should use it. Martha felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wasn't sure why. All right, Josiah. His name felt strange in her mouth, intimate in a way she hadn't expected. He held her gaze for a beat too long, then looked away back at the ledger. The south pasture. He said, his voice gruffer than before. We'll start on it when the ground thaws. Together. Together. Martha agreed. They sat in silence after that. But it wasn't the awkward silence of strangers. It was something else. Something warmer. Martha didn't let herself examine it too closely. Not yet. December arrived with a fury. Snow fell in sheets piling against the house until the drifts reached the windows. The temperature dropped so low that water froze in the pump overnight, and Martha had to boil snow on the stove for drinking and washing. But inside the house stayed warm. Josiah had cut enough wood to last 3 winters. The pantry was stocked with preserved vegetables and salted meat. The children had warm clothes. Martha had spent weeks sewing new shirts for Will and Henry, a proper coat for Lucy, from fabric Josiah had brought back from town without being asked. You didn't have to do that, Martha had said when he handed her the package. Children need proper coats. That's not what I meant. He'd looked at her, then something unreadable in his eyes. I know what you meant. Then he'd walked away, leaving her holding the fabric and feeling things she wasn't ready to feel. The isolation of winter forced them together in ways Martha hadn't anticipated. Long evenings by the fire with nowhere to go. Meals eaten as a group because eating alone seemed wasteful. Hours spent in the same small space, learning each other's rhythms and habits and silences. She learned that Josiah read every night before bed history mostly and poetry. That he hummed tunelessly while working with his hands. That he checked on each of the children before retiring, standing in doorways for long moments watching them sleep. She learned that he still talked to Rebecca sometimes. Late at night when he thought no one could hear his voice would drift through the thin walls. Not conversations exactly, more like reports. Updates on the ranch, on the weather, on the strangers who'd invaded his solitary life. Martha never let on that she heard. Some griefs were too private for acknowledgement. But she understood him better for knowing. Christmas approached with the stealth of a hunting cat. Martha had lost track of the days until Will mentioned it at breakfast, 2 weeks until Christmas. And what were they going to do? Martha looked up from her coffee. What do you mean? For Christmas? Papa always... Will stopped. His face clouded. Never mind. But Henry picked up where his brother left off. Papa made us things, special things, and Mama made a cake with the sugar she'd saved all year, and we sang songs. We don't have to do any of that. Will said quickly, glancing at Josiah. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. Martha could see it in the way Henry's shoulders slumped, in the way Lucy's eyes dropped to her plate. Of course we'll celebrate Christmas, she said firmly. We'll find a way. Josiah said nothing. Just finished his breakfast and headed outside with Will, same as every morning. But that night, after the children were asleep, Martha heard sounds from the barn that shouldn't have been there. She pulled on her coat and crossed the frozen yard, curiosity overcoming caution. The barn door was cracked open. Lamplight spilled out. She peered inside. Josiah sat at his workbench, tools spread before him, hands moving with careful precision over a block of wood. He was carving something. Martha watched fascinated as the wood took shape under his hands. A horse. A small wooden horse with a flowing mane and delicate legs. You can come in. His voice made her jump. He hadn't looked up. No point standing in the cold. Martha pushed the door open and stepped inside. The barn was warmer than outside animal heat from the horses, residual warmth from the day. I didn't know you could carve. Haven't in a while. He turned the horse over, examining it critically. Not since Rebecca died. She was the one who taught me. Martha moved closer, watching his hands work. It's beautiful. It's passable. But there was something in his voice that sounded almost like pleasure. Haven't made anything like this in 8 years. Forgot how it felt. Why now? He was quiet for a moment. Then, your boy, Will. He asked me once if I ever made things. Not built things, made things. Things that weren't useful, just beautiful. What did you tell him? Told him I used to. Before. He asked why I stopped. Josiah's hands stilled on the wood. Couldn't think of a good answer. Martha sat down on a hay bale near the workbench, close enough to watch, far enough to give him space. Rebecca taught you, she said softly. That's why you stopped, because it reminded you of her. Everything reminds me of her. The words came out rough, raw. This barn, this house, the way the light hits the mountains in the morning. For a long time I couldn't stand any of it. Thought about selling, walking away, starting over somewhere that didn't have her ghost in every corner. Why didn't you? Because she loved this place. She's buried here in the hill behind the house. If I left... He shook his head. It would have been like leaving her behind. I couldn't do that. Martha thought about Samuel, about the grave in Missouri she'd never see again, about the guilt that still crept up sometimes late at night, whispering that she should have stayed, should have fought harder, should have found a way. I understand, she said quietly. More than you know. Josiah looked at her then. Really looked. Not the assessing gaze of their first meeting or the guarded glances of the week since. Something deeper. Something that saw. Your husband. What was his name? Samuel. Samuel Calloway. How did he die? Mining accident. Cave-in at the silver mine where he worked. They never even recovered his body. The words came easier than she expected. She'd told the story before to landlords demanding rent, to creditors, demanding payment to strangers who wanted to know why a woman was traveling alone with 3 children. But this felt different. This wasn't explanation. This was sharing. 17 men died that day, she continued. 17 wives made widows. 17 families destroyed. The mine owners paid out a pittance and called it settled. Said the men knew the risks when they took the jobs. Did he know? He knew. Martha's voice hardened. He knew, and he went anyway because the pay was good, and his children needed to eat. He died trying to provide for us, and after he was gone, everyone acted like we were the burden. Like his death was an inconvenience for them. Is that why you left? That's part of it. She looked down at her hands. Samuel had debts I didn't know about, borrowed from people who weren't patient about repayment. After he died, they came for everything. The house, the furniture, things that had been in my family for generations. They would have taken the children if they could sent them to the workhouse, said I wasn't fit to care for them. So you ran. So I ran. They sat in silence. The horses shifted in their stalls. Wind moaned against the barn walls. You're safe here, Josiah said finally. Whatever happened in Missouri, whoever's looking for you, they won't find you here. I won't let them. Martha's throat tightened. You don't even know me. Not really. Why would you? I know enough. His voice was fierce, certain. I know you walked into a blizzard to save my cattle. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know your children love you so much they'd follow you into hell if you asked. That's enough. That's more than enough. She couldn't speak. Words had abandoned her. Josiah looked away back at the wooden horse in his hands. This is for Lucy. I'm making a doll too if I can remember how. And a knife for Will, a real one with a good blade. And for Henry. He paused, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. A wooden chicken. He'll probably think it's stupid, but he'll love it. Martha's voice came out thick. He'll love it because you made it. Josiah nodded slowly. I hope so. Josiah. He looked up. Thank you. For all of this. For giving us a home. For being kind to my children. For... She struggled for words. For letting us in. Something shifted in his expression. Something warm and terrifying and full of possibility. Thank you for not leaving. They stayed like that. Eyes locked, words unnecessary, while the wind howled outside and something new and fragile took root between them. Martha didn't know what to call it yet. She wasn't sure she was ready to, but she knew she wanted to find out. Christmas morning dawned bright and bitter cold. Martha woke before the children started the fire and found that Josiah had already been up for hours. Coffee was made. The table had been cleared. And in the center of the room, arranged with careful precision, sat 4 wrapped packages. Not fancy wrapping. Just brown paper and string. But the care that had gone into them was obvious. You didn't have to do this, Martha said. Josiah stood by the fireplace looking awkward and uncertain, so different from his usual stoic confidence that it made her heart ache. Wanted to. The children woke to shrieks and chaos. Lucy's wooden horse made her cry, real tears streaming down her face as she clutched it to her chest and declared it the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. The doll came next, hand-carved with yarn hair, and a dress made from fabric scraps, and Lucy insisted on naming her Rebecca right then and there. She didn't know the significance. Couldn't have known. But Martha saw Josiah's face when she said it, saw the way his breath caught, and his eyes went bright, and she had to look away before she started crying too. Will's knife was beautiful, a folding blade with a handle carved from dark wood, sturdy enough for real work, but small enough for a boy's hand. Josiah showed him how to hold it, how to sharpen it, how to respect what it could do. This isn't a toy, Josiah said seriously. This is a tool. A man's tool. You treat it right, it'll serve you for the rest of your life. Will looked at the knife, then at Josiah, and his voice came out thick. Yes, sir. I mean yes, Josiah. Henry's wooden chicken was indeed a chicken, a plump, ridiculous-looking hen, with a proud expression that bore an uncanny resemblance to Biscuit. Henry burst out laughing when he saw it, then immediately ran to the coop to show the real Biscuit her portrait. I think she likes it, he shouted from outside. She puffed up really big. Martha had gifts too, not carved but sewn through late nights when no one was watching. New shirts for the boys, a dress for Lucy made from the fabric Josiah had bought, a vest for Josiah himself pieced together from whatever materials she could find, lined with wool for warmth. He stared at it for a long moment after unwrapping it. You made this. It's not much. You made this. He looked up at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. No one's made me anything in 8 years. Well, Martha's voice came out strange. Now someone has. He put the vest on immediately. Wore it for the rest of the day. Wore it every day after that, until it became as much a part of him as his boots or his hat. And Martha pretended not to notice how that made her feel. The day after Christmas, Josiah asked Martha to walk with him. "There's something I want to show you," he said. "If you're willing." She pulled on her coat and followed him outside, leaving the children with strict instructions to behave. They walked in silence through the snow, past the barn, past the chicken coop, up a gentle hill she'd never climbed before. The ground was rough here, dotted with stones, and she had to watch her footing. At the top of the hill, she understood why. A grave marker. Simple wood weathered by 8 years of Wyoming weather, but still legible. Rebecca Jane Mercer, beloved wife. 1851 to 1870. Martha stood beside Josiah and said nothing. This wasn't a moment for words. "I haven't brought anyone here since the funeral," he said finally. "Haven't wanted to. She was mine, and this was the last thing I could keep private. Why are you showing me now?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because I want you to know her. Not just know about her, know her. She was—" He stopped, swallowed. "She was the best person I ever met. Kind. Brave. She could make me laugh when nothing else could. She saw something in me worth loving when I couldn't see it myself." "You loved her very much." "I did. I still do. I don't think that will ever stop." Martha nodded slowly. "That's how it should be. Love like that doesn't just disappear. It becomes part of you." "Does it get easier?" He turned to face her. "The grief. Does it ever stop feeling like a hole in your chest?" "It changes." Martha chose her words carefully. "The hole doesn't close, but it stops bleeding. You learn to live around it, build new things beside it. Eventually, you can look at it without falling in." "How long?" "Different for everyone. For me?" She looked out at the snow-covered landscape, the mountains rising in the distance. It was when Lucy laughed for the first time after Samuel died. Really laughed, not just pretending to be okay. "I heard that sound and I thought he's still here. In her. In all of them. He's not gone as long as they're alive." Josiah was silent for a long time. Then, "I want them to know about Rebecca, your children. I want to tell them stories about her, show them the things she loved. Is that—" He struggled for words. "Is that strange?" "It's not strange. It's honoring her memory." "I thought it might make you uncomfortable. You being here in her house, living her life." Martha turned to face him fully. "I'm not living her life. I wouldn't try to replace her. What I have here, what we're building, it's something new. Different. It doesn't diminish what you had with her. It just exists alongside it." "You really believe that?" "I do." He looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and took her hand. His fingers were cold, calloused, strong. Martha didn't pull away. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For understanding. For not being threatened by a ghost. She's not a ghost to you. She's a memory. There's a difference." His grip tightened briefly. Then he let go. "We should get back. Children will be wondering where we went." They walked down the hill together, not touching, but closer than they'd been before. And Martha understood that something fundamental had shifted between them. She wasn't sure what to do about it. She wasn't sure she wanted to do anything at all. But she knew with the bone-deep certainty of someone who'd learned to trust her instincts that whatever came next would change everything. For better or worse. New Year's Eve arrived quiet and cold. The children were asleep. The house was still. Martha sat by the fire with a cup of tea she'd let go cold, staring at nothing. Josiah appeared in the doorway of his room. Couldn't sleep. Too much thinking. He crossed to the chair across from her and sat down. They'd fallen into this habit, these late-night moments of conversation, when the rest of the world was sleeping. "What are you thinking about?" Martha looked at him. At this man who'd been a stranger 2 months ago and was now… what? A friend. A partner. Something more. "I'm thinking about what happens next," she said honestly. "We agreed I'd stay through winter. But winter will end, spring will come, and then… I don't know. That's the problem." Josiah leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "What do you want to happen?" The question hung between them. Martha could lie, could give a safe answer about finding work elsewhere, starting over somewhere new, could protect herself from the risk of wanting something she might not get to keep. But she was tired of lying, tired of protecting herself, tired of running. "I want to stay," she said quietly. "Here. With my children. With you." His breath caught. She heard it clearly in the silent room. "You mean that?" "I mean it." She held his gaze. "But I need to know, is that something you want too? Or have I been reading this all wrong?" Josiah was still for so long she thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then he stood, crossed the space between them, knelt beside her chair. "I haven't let myself want anything in 8 years, he said, his voice rough. "I didn't think I was allowed. Didn't think I deserved it. But you and your children, you've made me remember what wanting feels like." "Josiah? Let me finish." He took her hands in his. "I'm broken, Martha. I've got more damage than one man has a right to carry. I'm terrible at talking about feelings. I'll probably make you angry at least once a week for the rest of your life. But if you're willing to stay, if you can look at all my broken pieces and still want to be here, then I want you to stay. More than I've wanted anything in 8 years. Martha's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "That's not a proposal," she said, her voice thick. "No." His hands tightened on hers. "That's a promise. When I propose, and I will when the time is right, I want you to be sure. Sure of me, sure of this life, sure that you're not just choosing safety, but choosing something you actually want. And in the meantime, we keep building what we've started, day by day, moment by moment, until staying isn't a question anymore, it's just the truth of who we are." Martha reached up and touched his face, felt the rough stubble, the strong jaw, the warmth of skin that had been cold for so long. "I think I could love you," she whispered, "given time. I think I'm already halfway there." His voice cracked on the words. "God help me, Martha. I never meant for this to happen." "Neither did I." They stayed like that as the fire burned low, and the old year died, and the new year was born. Not kissing, not yet. Just holding each other in the darkness, and finally letting themselves hope. All 12. January passed in a blur of snow and quiet contentment. Martha caught herself humming while she worked now. Small thing, but she noticed it because she couldn't remember the last time she'd hummed. Couldn't remember the last time her body felt light enough for music. The children noticed too. "Mama's happy," Lucy announced one morning at breakfast apropos of nothing. "Her face is different." "Different how?" Will asked, not looking up from his eggs. "Softer, like when Papa used to make her laugh." The table went quiet. Martha felt heat rise to her cheeks. Josiah's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Well," Martha said carefully, "I suppose I am happy. We have a warm house, good food, and each other. That's plenty to be happy about." "And Josiah," Henry added. "We have Josiah too." "Yes." Martha's eyes met Josiah's across the table. "We have Josiah too." Something passed between them. Something the children were too young to name, but old enough to sense. Will looked between them, his expression unreadable. Then he went back to his eggs. After breakfast, while the children scattered to their various tasks, Josiah lingered by the door. "Your daughter sees too much." "She always has. Her father used to say she was born with old eyes." She's not wrong, though. He pulled on his gloves, not quite meeting her gaze. About your face being different. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Good. He finally looked at her. Definitely good. Then he was gone out into the cold, and Martha stood in the warm kitchen, feeling like a girl half her age. February brought a thaw. Not spring. Wyoming was months away from spring, but a softening. The brutal cold eased into something merely harsh. The snow stopped falling quite so relentlessly, and the sun, when it appeared, held a promise of warmth to come. It also brought visitors. Martha heard the horses before she saw them. 2 riders approaching from the south, moving with the purposeful pace of people who knew where they were going. She stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron, as Josiah emerged from the barn. "You expecting anyone?" she called. "No." He moved to stand beside her, his hand resting casually near the rifle he kept by the door. The riders drew closer. A man and a woman, both well-dressed for travelers, both carrying themselves with the particular stiffness of people uncomfortable on horseback. City folk. Martha could spot them a mile away. They stopped in front of the house. The man dismounted first, then helped the woman down with exaggerated care. "Mr. Mercer." The man's voice was clipped. "Eastern." "Josiah Mercer." "That's right. Who's asking?" "My name is Thomas Whitfield. This is my wife Eleanor." He paused, his eyes sliding to Martha. "We're looking for a woman named Martha Calloway. We were told she might be here." Martha's blood turned to ice. "I'm Martha Calloway. What do you want?" Eleanor Whitfield stepped forward. She was perhaps 50, handsome in a severe way, with gray-streaked hair pulled back tight and eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Calloway." Her voice dripped with false warmth. "I'm your late husband's aunt, Samuel's father's sister. We've been searching for you for quite some time." Martha's mind raced. Samuel had never mentioned an aunt, never mentioned any family at all, except parents who'd died before she met him. "I didn't know Samuel had an aunt. We were estranged." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "A family disagreement years ago. But when we heard about poor Samuel's death and learned that his widow and children had simply vanished, we became concerned," Thomas finished. "A woman alone with 3 young children. Surely you can understand our worry." Josiah shifted beside Martha. His hand had moved closer to the rifle. "What exactly are you worried about?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "The children, of course." Eleanor's gaze swept over the ranch with barely concealed disdain. "This is hardly a proper environment for raising young ones. The isolation, the primitive conditions." "There's nothing primitive about this ranch." Martha's voice came out harder than she intended. "My children are fed, clothed, warm, and loved. That's more than they had in Missouri after Samuel died. Yes, we heard about the difficulties." Thomas exchanged a look with his wife. "The debts, the creditors, quite unfortunate." "Unfortunate." Martha's hands curled into fists. "That's one word for it." "The point is," Eleanor cut in smoothly, "we're here to offer help. The Whitfield family has resources. We could provide a proper home for the children, education, opportunity." "You could take them, you mean?" "We could give them a better life." The words hung in the cold air. Martha felt Josiah move closer to her, not touching, but present. Solid. A wall between her and whatever these people represented. "Let me be clear," Martha said, her voice steady, despite the terror clawing at her chest. "My children are not going anywhere. They have a home, they have a family, and no amount of money or opportunity will change that." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Mrs. Calloway, I don't think you understand your position. You're a widow living unmarried with a strange man in a territory with barely any law. If we chose to pursue legal custody of those children, you'd lose." Josiah's voice cut through Eleanor's threat like a blade. "Excuse me. I said you'd lose." He stepped forward, and something in his posture made both Whitfields take an involuntary step back. "Mrs. Calloway came to this ranch as my housekeeper. She and her children live in separate quarters properly chaperoned. There's not a judge in Wyoming who'd call that arrangement improper. But, furthermore, Josiah wasn't finished. If you're truly Samuel Calloway's family, you'll know that he died owing money to half of Missouri. Money that Martha here has been working to repay honorably and honestly. Where were you when the creditors came knocking? Where were you when she had to choose between feeding her children and paying her husband's debts? Eleanor's mouth opened, closed, opened again. We didn't know. You didn't care. Martha found her voice again. Samuel never mentioned you because there was nothing to mention. You weren't family to him. You're not family to his children. And if you think you can waltz in here after 2 years of nothing and claim some kind of right, Mrs. Calloway. Thomas held up his hands. There's no need for hostility. We simply wanted to offer assistance. Then offer it from a distance. Send money if you want. But you're not taking my children. Not today. Not ever. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Eleanor straightened her spine, her face settling into cold disapproval. This isn't over, Mrs. Calloway. We have lawyers. We have influence. And when the courts hear how you've been raising those children in a shack in the middle of nowhere with a man who's not their father, that's enough. The voice came from behind Martha. Will stood in the doorway, his face pale but determined. He must have heard everything. Ma'am, he said, his voice steady despite his fear. I'm 10 years old. I remember my father. I remember my life before he died. And I'm telling you now, this is the best my family's had it since he passed. Mr. Mercer treats my mother with respect. He's teaching me how to be a man. My brother and sister are happy for the first time in years. He stepped out onto the porch, positioning himself beside Martha. You want to take us away from that? You'll have to drag us, and I'll fight you every step of the way. Martha's heart swelled with pride and broke with sorrow in the same moment. Her boy, her brave, broken boy, standing up to adults who wanted to tear his world apart. Eleanor stared at Will for a long moment. Then she turned to her husband. Thomas, we're leaving. But now. They mounted their horses without another word. Eleanor paused once, looking back at Martha with an expression that promised this wasn't finished. Then they rode away. Martha's legs gave out the moment they disappeared over the hill. Josiah caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you. His voice was rough in her ear. I've got you. They're going to take them. Her voice came out ragged. They're going to find a way. They're not taking anyone. You don't know that. They have money. They have lawyers. They have nothing. Josiah turned her to face him, his hands firm on her shoulders. Listen to me. They have nothing. You're the mother of those children. You've cared for them, provided for them, loved them. No court in this territory is going to take children from a mother who's done nothing wrong. But living here with you is perfectly proper. His jaw tightened. Though if it would help, if it would protect the children. He stopped, swallowed hard. If what would help? Martha asked. Josiah looked at her for a long moment. Then he dropped to one knee in the frozen mud of the yard, still holding her hands. Marry me. The words hit her like a physical blow. Josiah? I know it's not romantic. I know this isn't how you imagined being asked. But those people are going to come back with lawyers and judges and every legal trick they can think of. And the best way to fight them is to show that your children have a family, a real, legal, unquestionable family. You don't have to do this. I know I don't have to. His voice cracked. I want to. I've wanted to since New Year's Eve. I was just waiting for the right moment, and this isn't it. This is possibly the worst moment in history, but... Yes. He froze. What? Yes. Martha's voice came out thick. I'll marry you. You will? Did you think I'd say no? I thought you'd want time. Want to be sure. Want... I've had time." She knelt down to meet him in the mud, their faces inches apart. "I've spent 2 months watching you with my children. Watching you teach my son and make my daughter laugh and earn my youngest's trust. I've spent 2 months learning who you are underneath all those walls." "And who am I?" "A good man." Her voice broke. "A broken man who's trying to be whole again. A man who lost everything and somehow found the courage to let people back in." "Martha, I love you." The words came out before she could stop them. "I didn't mean to. Didn't think I could after Samuel. But I do. I love you, Josiah Mercer, and yes, I'll marry you." He kissed her. Not gentle, not hesitant. A kiss that had 8 years of loneliness behind it. 8 years of wanting and denying and protecting himself from feeling. When they broke apart, Martha was crying. So was he. "Well," Will's voice came from the porch, equal parts amused and embarrassed. "Guess I should tell Henry and Lucy." Martha laughed through her tears. Yes, I think you should." Will disappeared inside. A moment later, Lucy's shriek of joy echoed across the ranch. And Martha knelt in the mud with the man who would become her husband and let herself believe finally that this was real, that this could last, that she'd finally found her way home. The wedding was simple. 2 weeks after the proposal, in the front room of the ranch house with the minister from Silver Ridge and the children as witnesses. Martha wore her best dress, the one she'd arrived in mended and cleaned until it almost looked new. Josiah wore the vest she'd made him for Christmas. "Do you, Josiah Mercer, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Martha Jane Calloway, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Martha looked at Josiah's face, at the hope and fear and love written there in equal measure. "I do." The minister pronounced them married. Josiah kissed her brief and almost shy in front of the children, and suddenly it was real. Legally, irrevocably real. Lucy burst into applause. Henry grinned so wide Martha thought his face might split. Will stood with his arms crossed, trying to look unaffected, but she caught the shimmer in his eyes. "Does this mean I can call you Pa?" Henry asked Josiah. Will said I should ask first. Josiah's throat worked. "You can call me whatever you want, Henry. Whatever feels right." "Pa, then." Henry nodded decisively. "You feel like a pa." The word broke something in Josiah. Martha saw it happen, watched 8 years of walls crumble in a single moment. He pulled Henry into a hug so fierce the boy squeaked. "Thank you." Josiah said, his voice muffled. "Thank you for letting me be that." Lucy piled on next, then, after a moment's hesitation, Will. And Martha stood watching her family embrace this patchwork collection of broken people who'd somehow found each other and felt whole for the first time since Samuel died. Maybe for the first time ever. That night, after the children were asleep and the minister had gone home, Martha and Josiah sat together by the fire. Not talking. Just existing in the same space in the new reality of what they'd become. "It doesn't feel real," Martha said finally. "Any of it." "I know. 3 months ago I was on a stagecoach with 3 starving children and no hope. Now, I'm married to a difficult rancher with more emotional baggage than one man should carry." She smiled despite herself. "I was going to say home. But yes, that too." Josiah reached over and took her hand. "I keep waiting to wake up," he admitted. "Keep expecting to open my eyes and find the house empty again. Just me in the silence, and Rebecca's ghost." "Do you still talk to her?" The question came out before Martha could stop it. Josiah was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. Less than before." He looked at their joined hands. "I told her about you. About the children. I think she would have liked you. She had a soft spot for stubborn women." "What did you tell her?" "That I was scared. That I didn't know if I was allowed to be happy again. that I felt like I was betraying her by loving someone else. Martha's heart clenched. What did she say? Nothing. Josiah's voice was rough. She's dead. She doesn't say anything. Josiah? But I know what she would have said. He turned to look at her fully. She would have said I was being an idiot. That love doesn't run out, doesn't divide up, so there's less for everyone. That being happy again wasn't a betrayal, it was a gift, one she'd want me to take. She sounds wise. She was. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She'd have told me to stop moping and start living. Probably would have pushed you at me herself if she could have. I wish I'd known her. I wish you had too. They sat in comfortable silence as the fire burned low. So what happens now? Martha asked. Now? Josiah squeezed her hand. Now we live. We raise your children. We run this ranch. We face whatever comes, the Whitfields, the weather, the world together. Together. Martha tested the word. I haven't had a together in a long time. Neither have I. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. Reckon we'll figure it out as we go. Reckon we will. He smiled, then a real smile, not the ghost of one, and Martha felt something loosen in her chest. Some last lingering fear that this was too good to be true, that she'd wake up back on that stagecoach with nothing. But she was here. He was here. The children were sleeping peacefully in the next room. This was real. This was home. March arrived with the kind of weather that couldn't make up its mind. Snow one day, rain the next, mud everywhere in between. The ranch became a constant battle against the elements, and Martha found herself working alongside Josiah in ways she'd never imagined. They cleared the south pasture together, just as they'd planned. Martha hauled brush and stones, while Josiah cut down dead trees. Will helped where he could, learning to use an axe with growing confidence. Even Henry pitched in, carrying water and keeping everyone fed. It was hard work, brutal work. But Martha had never felt more alive. You're not what I expected, Josiah said one evening, watching her split kindling with practiced efficiency. What did you expect? I don't know. Something softer, maybe. More ladylike. Martha snorted. I was never ladylike. Ask anyone in Missouri. I was the scandal of the county, a woman who worked alongside her husband, who spoke her mind, who refused to play the proper wife. Samuel didn't mind. Samuel loved it. She set down the axe, wiping sweat from her forehead. He used to say I was worth 3 hired hands and looked better in a dress. He meant it as a compliment. Sounds like a good man. He was. Martha's voice softened. Flawed, sometimes foolish, but good. He would have liked you, I think. You think so? I know so. He respected people who worked hard and said what they meant. That was important to him. Josiah was quiet for a moment. I hope I can live up to that. To what he was for you, for the children. Martha crossed to him, took his face in her hands. You're not replacing him. You're not trying to be him. You're building something new with us. Something that exists because of who you are, not who he was. Is that enough? It's everything. She kissed him right there in the muddy yard, with the children probably watching from the windows. Let them watch. Let the whole world watch. She was done hiding. Done being afraid. She was home, and she was staying. The letter arrived in late March. Martha was making bread when she heard horses approach. She wiped her hands and went to the door, expecting to see one of the neighboring ranchers, or maybe the minister again. Instead, she saw a courier in a crisp uniform holding an envelope like it might explode. Mrs. Martha Mercer. Her new name still felt strange. That's me. Legal correspondence from the territory of Wyoming. He handed her the envelope. You've been served. Then he was gone, riding back toward town before Martha could ask questions. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. The words swam before her eyes, but she caught enough. Petition for custody. Minor children. Unfit environment. Whitfield family claims. Martha. Josiah's voice came from behind her. What is it? She handed him the letter, unable to speak. He read it. His face went pale, then red, then settled into something cold and hard. They're claiming Lucy isn't yours. What? They're saying she's not Samuel's biological daughter. That he adopted her from some other woman before you were married, and that makes her a Whitfield by blood. Martha's legs gave out for the second time in a month. This time, there was no one to catch her. Yo. Martha sat on the floor where she'd fallen, the letter crumpled in her fist, her mind refusing to process what she'd read. Not Samuel's biological daughter. Lucy. Her Lucy. The child she'd raised from infancy, nursed through fevers, held through nightmares, loved with every fiber of her being. Not hers by blood. Martha. Josiah knelt beside her, his hands on her shoulders. Martha, look at me. She couldn't. If she looked at him, she'd fall apart completely. Is it true? His voice was careful, gentle. Did Samuel adopt Lucy before you were married? The words unlocked something in Martha's chest. Yes. Her voice came out broken. He told me when we were courting. Said there'd been a woman before me, a brief thing, a mistake. She'd died in childbirth and left him with a baby girl he didn't know how to raise. That's why he wanted to marry so quick. He needed a mother for Lucy. But you raised her. From what, 2 years old? 18 months. Martha finally looked up. She was 18 months old when I married Samuel. She called me Mama before she could say any other word. She doesn't know. She's never known. Then how do the Whitfields know? That was the question, the one that had been clawing at Martha's mind since she read the letter. I don't know. Samuel never talked about his family, said they'd disowned him years ago, wanted nothing to do with him. She pressed her palms against her eyes. Maybe they had records. Maybe someone in Missouri talked. Maybe... It doesn't matter how they know. Josiah's voice hardened. What matters is what we do about it. What can we do if Lucy isn't mine by blood, and she's not Samuel's by blood, then? She's yours. His hands tightened on her shoulders. She's yours in every way that matters. You're her mother. You've been her mother for 4 years. No piece of paper changes that. The law might see it differently. Then we fight the law. Martha looked at her husband still so strange to think, and saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Rage. Not the cold, controlled anger she'd seen before. This was something hotter, something dangerous. Josiah. They're not taking her. His voice was low and fierce. They're not taking any of them. I don't care what lies they've dug up or what lawyers they've bought. Those children are ours, our family, and I will burn this territory to the ground before I let anyone tear that apart. For a moment, Martha couldn't breathe. No one had ever fought for her before. Not like this. Samuel had loved her, but he'd been soft, a dreamer, not a fighter. When trouble came, he'd run. It was how they'd ended up in Missouri in the first place. But Josiah wasn't running. Josiah was digging in. We need a lawyer, Martha said, finding her voice. Someone who knows territorial law. I know a man in Cheyenne. He helped me with the ranch deed after Caleb died. He's good, honest. Josiah stood, pulling her up with him. I'll ride out tomorrow. You stay here with the children. I should come. No. His tone left no room for argument. The Whitfields are watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. If we both leave, they could claim the children were abandoned. You need to stay. Protect them. He was right. Martha hated that he was right. What do I tell them? Lucy's going to ask why you're gone. Tell her I'm handling business in town. Nothing more. She doesn't need to carry this weight. And Will? Josiah hesitated. Will should know, he said finally. He's old enough. And if something happens, if the Whitfields come while I'm gone, he needs to understand the stakes. Martha nodded slowly. Her eldest. Her boy, who was trying so hard to be a man. Another burden she never wanted to put on his shoulders. But he'd carry it anyway. He always did. Josiah left before dawn. Martha stood on the porch and watched him ride away, her shawl pulled tight against the cold, her heart heavy with fear she couldn't show. "Mama!" Will's voice came from behind her. He'd been awake when she told him had listened to the whole story with that too serious expression that made him look 30 instead of 10. "He's gone." She didn't turn around. "It's just us now until he gets back. I won't let them take Lucy." "Will, I mean it." He moved to stand beside her. "I don't care what some paper says. She's my sister. She's always been my sister. Blood doesn't make family." The words hit Martha like a physical blow. Blood doesn't make family. How many times had she thought those exact words? How many times had she told herself that loving Lucy was enough, that raising her was enough, that it didn't matter who had given birth to her? But the law didn't care about love. The law cared about blood and papers, and who had the money to buy justice. "I know, sweetheart." She finally turned to face her son. "I know, but knowing it and proving it in court are two different things. Then we prove it." Will's jaw set with determination. "We show them who Lucy really belongs to. We fight. We will. Promise." Martha pulled him close. "I promise." The days without Josiah were the longest of Martha's life. She went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, managing the ranch with Will's help, but her mind was elsewhere. Calculating. Worrying. Planning for scenarios she prayed would never come. Lucy knew something was wrong. She'd always been perceptive, her heart smart, as she called it, and Martha's attempts at normalcy weren't fooling anyone. "Mama, are you sad?" The question came on the third night while Martha was braiding Lucy's hair before bed. "A little baby, but it's nothing for you to worry about." "Is it because of the people? The ones who came before?" Martha's hand stilled. "What do you remember about them?" "The lady had mean eyes." Lucy's voice was matter-of-fact. "She looked at me like I was something she wanted to buy at the store. I didn't like it." "No, I didn't like it either." "Are they going to come back?" Martha turned Lucy to face her, looked into those blue eyes, Samuel's eyes. Or so she'd always thought, though. Now she wondered whose eyes they really were. It didn't matter. They were Lucy's eyes. That was enough. "They might come back," Martha said carefully. "But whatever happens, I need you to know something. Can you listen?" Lucy nodded solemnly. "You are my daughter. Do you understand? No matter what anyone says, no matter what papers they wave around, you are mine. I chose you. I raised you. I love you more than anything in this world. And nothing is ever going to change that." Why would someone say different? The innocent question broke Martha's heart. Because some people think family is only about blood, about who gave birth to who. But you and I know better, don't we? We know that family is about love, about showing up every day, about choosing each other. Like you and Josiah. Yes, baby. Exactly like me and Josiah. Lucy was quiet for a moment, processing. "Mama, did you give birth to me?" The question Martha had dreaded for 4 years. The one she'd rehearsed answers to 1,000 times, hoping she'd never have to use them. "No, sweetheart, I didn't. Your birth mama died when you were very small, but your Papa Samuel, he loved you so much that he found me to be your new mama. And I loved you from the very first moment I held you." Lucy's face was unreadable. "So I had 2 mamas." "Yes, 2 mamas who both loved you very much. But you're my real mama, the one who stayed." "Yes." Martha's voice cracked. "I'm the one who stayed." Lucy threw her arms around Martha's neck. "I don't care about the other mama," she whispered fiercely. "You're mine. I'm not going anywhere. Martha held her daughter and let herself cry, just for a moment, just until she had to be strong again. Josiah returned on the 5th day. Martha heard the horse before she saw it, and she was running before her mind caught up with her legs. He'd barely dismounted before she was in his arms, holding on like he might disappear if she let go. "It's all right." His voice was rough with exhaustion. "I'm back. It's all right." "What did the lawyer say?" Josiah pulled back his hands on her shoulders, his face grim. "Let's go inside. The children shouldn't hear this." Martha's stomach dropped. They sent Will to the barn with Henry and Lucy, some invented task to keep them busy, and sat at the kitchen table with coffee neither of them touched. "The lawyer's name is James Harker," Josiah began. "He's one of the best in the territory, fought cases against railroad barons and won. If anyone can help us, it's him." But the Whitfields have documentation, birth records from Missouri. A letter from the woman who gave birth to Lucy naming her family and expressing a wish that they raise the child if anything happened to her. "That's impossible. Samuel said the mother had no family. That's why he took Lucy in the first place." "She lied, or Samuel lied. Either way, there's a paper trail and the Whitfields have followed it." Martha felt the ground shift beneath her. "So what do we do?" "Harker says we have options." Josiah's voice was careful now, measuring each word. "The strongest is to argue that you've been Lucy's de facto parent for 4 years, that taking her now would cause irreparable harm, that the Whitfields have no relationship with her and can't claim to act in her best interest." Will that work? Maybe. Harker's seen cases like this go both ways. A lot depends on the judge, on how the Whitfields present their case, on... He stopped. "On what?" "On whether they can prove you're an unfit mother." The words hit like a slap. "Unfit. I've worked myself to the bone for those children. I know." Josiah reached across the table, took her hands. "I know, but the Whitfields have money, and money can buy testimony. They could find people in Missouri willing to say whatever they're paid to say. They could twist the fact that you fled with the children, that you were living with me before we were married, that... But we're married now. Everything is proper now. Now. But they're going to ask about before. And the truth is..." He paused, choosing words carefully. "The truth is, a widow traveling alone with 3 children, ending up at a bachelor rancher's homestead, people can make that look however they want it to look." Martha pulled her hands away. "So what are you saying, that we've already lost?" "I'm saying we need to be prepared for all possibilities, including losing Lucy." Josiah didn't answer. That was answer enough. The hearing was set for April. Martha spent the weeks between gathering documents, writing letters to anyone in Missouri who might testify to her character, rehearsing what she'd say to the judge. But mostly, she spent them with Lucy. Every moment felt precious now. Every breakfast, every bedtime story, every casual mama thrown over a shoulder. Martha memorized them all, hoarding them like gold against the possibility of a future without them. Lucy seemed to sense the change. She clung closer than usual, asked more questions, needed more reassurance. "Mama, you'd never leave me, right? Never, baby. Even if someone tried to make you, even then, I'd fight for you until my last breath. Promise? Promise." The night before the hearing, Martha couldn't sleep. She stood on the porch in the dark, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. Josiah found her there. "You should rest." "Can't. Martha. I keep thinking about what happens if we lose." Her voice was barely a whisper. "If they take her, if I have to watch my daughter be dragged away by strangers who don't love her, who only want her because of some blood connection that means nothing. We're not going to lose. You don't know that." "No." He moved to stand beside her. "I don't. But I know that whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. And I know that even if the worst happens, even if they take her, we don't stop fighting. We appeal. We petition. We do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And if that's not enough..." Josiah was quiet for a long moment. "When Rebecca died," he said finally, "I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never feel anything again. I closed myself off from everyone, everything, because the pain of losing her was so unbearable I couldn't imagine surviving it. Josiah. But I did survive, day by day, moment by moment. Not because the pain went away, but because I kept going anyway. And eventually, years later, you walked into that general store and reminded me that surviving wasn't the same as living." He turned to face her. "If we lose Lucy tomorrow, the pain will be unbearable. But we'll survive it. We'll keep fighting. And someday, maybe years from now, we'll find a way to bring her home." "You really believe that?" "I have to." His voice cracked. "Because the alternative is giving up. And I don't know how to do that anymore. Not since you taught me how to hope again." Martha reached for him. He held her tight. They stood together in the dark, drawing strength from each other, preparing for a battle that might cost them everything. The courtroom in Cheyenne was smaller than Martha expected. A single room with wooden benches, a raised platform for the judge, and a musty smell that spoke of decades of disputes and decisions. The children had been left at the hotel with a trusted neighbor. Josiah had insisted they shouldn't witness what might happen. Martha was grateful for that now. The Whitfields sat on the opposite side of the room, Eleanor in a dress that cost more than Martha's entire wardrobe, Thomas in a suit that screamed Eastern money. Their lawyer was a small, sharp-faced man who looked like he'd never lost a case in his life. James Harker sat beside Martha and Josiah, his presence solid and reassuring. He'd coached her through what to expect, what to say, how to present herself. Now, all she could do was wait. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Marcus Webb." The judge was older than Martha expected. White-haired, stern-faced, with eyes that had seen too much human misery to be shocked by any of it. He listened as the lawyers presented their cases. The Whitfield's man spoke first, smooth-practiced, weaving a story of a poor orphaned child stolen from her rightful family by a desperate widow who'd fled her debts and ended up in the arms of a strange man. Martha's hands shook with rage. Josiah's hand found hers under the table and held tight. Then it was Harker's turn. He spoke of Martha's devotion, of 4 years of sacrifice and love, of a child who knew no other mother who would be traumatized by removal from the only family she'd ever known. He called witnesses the minister who'd married Martha and Josiah, neighbors, who testified to her character, even Mrs. Dawson from the general store who'd traveled all the way from Silver Ridge to speak on her behalf. "That woman walked into my store half dead from cold with 3 starving children," Mrs. Dawson said, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "And she didn't beg, didn't cry. She asked for work, any work, because she'd do whatever it took to keep those babies alive. That's not an unfit mother. That's the best kind of mother there is." When it was Martha's turn to testify, her voice didn't shake. She told the truth, all of it. The poverty in Missouri, the debt Samuel had left, the decision to run rather than let the workhouse take her children. "I've made mistakes," she said, looking directly at the judge. "I've been desperate. I've done things I'm not proud of. But everything I've done for my children. Lucy is my daughter in every way that matters. She calls me Mama. She trusts me to protect her. Taking her away now wouldn't be justice, it would be cruelty." The judge was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I've heard compelling arguments from both sides. The law is clear on matters of blood relation, but the law must also consider the welfare of the child." He paused, his gaze moving from Martha to the Whitfields. "I'll render my decision tomorrow morning." Tomorrow. Another night of not knowing. Another night of fear. Martha barely remembered leaving the courtroom. That night back at the hotel, she held Lucy extra long. "Mama, why are you squeezing so tight?" "Because I love you. Is that okay?" "Yeah." Lucy snuggled closer. "That's okay." Will and Henry were quiet. They knew something was happening, even if they didn't know exactly what. The fear in the room was palpable, thick enough to taste. "No matter what happens tomorrow," Martha said to all three of them, "I want you to know how proud I am, of all of you. You've been so brave through everything, the journey here, the new home, all of it. You're the strongest children I've ever known." "Mama." Will's voice was rough. "Are they going to take Lucy?" Martha couldn't lie to him. She'd never been able to lie to him. "I don't know, sweetheart. But whatever happens, we stay together. In here." She pressed her hand to her heart. "No matter where our bodies are, we stay together in here." Will nodded slowly. Then he reached out and took Lucy's hand. "She's my sister," he said firmly. "Nothing changes that." Henry nodded agreement, his small face set with determination. Lucy looked at her brothers, then at Martha. "I'm not scared," she said quietly, "because you're here, and as long as you're here, everything's okay." Martha held her children and prayed to God, to Samuel, to whatever power might be listening, that she'd be able to keep that promise. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Word had spread about the case, the desperate widow, the wealthy family, the little girl caught in the middle. People Martha didn't know lined the benches, their faces curious, sympathetic, or simply hungry for drama. She ignored them all. Her eyes were fixed on the judge as he entered, as he settled into his chair, as he shuffled through papers that held her family's fate. "I've considered the evidence presented by both parties." Judge Webb began, his voice echoing in the silent room. "This is not an easy decision. The law recognizes the importance of blood relation, but it also recognizes the bonds formed through care and upbringing." Martha's heart pounded so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. "The Whitfields have presented documentation establishing Lucy's blood connection to their family. However, they have had no contact with the child for 4 years. They've made no effort to support her, raise her, or participate in her life in any meaningful way." Eleanor Whitfield's face tightened. Mrs. Mercer, by contrast, has been Lucy's mother in every practical sense since the child was 18 months old. She has fed her, clothed her, educated her, and loved her. Multiple witnesses have testified to the strength of their bond and to Mrs. Mercer's fitness as a parent. Martha couldn't breathe. "Blood is important," the judge continued. "But it is not everything. A child is not property to be claimed by whoever can produce the right paperwork. A child is a human being with relationships and attachments that must be considered." He paused, his gaze sweeping the courtroom. "It is the ruling of this court that Lucy Calloway, now, Lucy Mercer, shall remain in the custody of her mother, Martha Mercer, and her stepfather, Josiah Mercer. The petition of the Whitfield family is denied." For a moment, Martha didn't understand. Then Josiah grabbed her hand, and James Harker was smiling, and somewhere behind her, someone started clapping. They'd won. Lucy was hers. Forever. Martha broke down completely. Great heaving sobs that she couldn't control and didn't want to. Josiah held her while she fell apart, while a courtroom full of strangers watched while the Whitfields gathered their papers and left without a word. "It's over," Josiah murmured in her ear. "It's over. She's ours. She's ours." Martha repeated the words like a prayer. "She's ours." When she finally pulled herself together enough to look up, she saw Eleanor Whitfield pausing at the door. Their eyes met. For a moment, something almost like respect flickered across Eleanor's face. Then she was gone, and Martha was free.
Bambane.
The ride back to Silver Ridge felt different. Martha sat in the wagon with Lucy pressed against her side, watching the Wyoming landscape roll past, and everything looked new. The mountains rising in the distance, the endless sky stretching overhead, the way the spring sun caught the last patches of snow and turned them to diamonds. She'd seen this land 100 times before, but today, for the first time, it felt like hers. "Mama." Lucy's voice was sleepy. She'd dozed off twice during the journey, exhausted from the stress of the past weeks, even if she didn't fully understand it. "Are we almost home?" "Almost, baby. Another hour." "Good." Lucy snuggled closer. "I missed Biscuit." Martha laughed. It came out wet, more tears than humor, but it was real. "I'm sure Biscuit missed you too. And my bed, and the horses, and the chickens." Lucy paused. "And the house. It's a good house." "It is. Better than the stagecoach." "Much better than the stagecoach." Will sat on Martha's other side, his face turned toward the horizon, his expression unreadable. He'd been quiet since the verdict, not unhappy, just processing. He did that, sometimes retreated inside himself to sort through big emotions. "You okay, sweetheart?" Martha asked softly. "Yeah." He was quiet for another moment. Then, "I was ready to fight them." "I know you were." "If the judge had said different, if they'd tried to take her, I had a plan." "What kind of plan?" Will's jaw tightened. "Doesn't matter now. But I would have done it, whatever it took." Martha's heart broke and swelled at the same time. Her boy. Her fierce, protective boy. "I know," she said. "I know you would have." "She's my sister." "Yes, she is." "Blood doesn't matter." "No, it doesn't." Will nodded slowly, some tension releasing from his shoulders. "Good. Just wanted to make sure you knew." "I know, Will. I've always known." He leaned against her then, just for a moment, letting himself be a child instead of the man he was trying so hard to become. Martha wrapped her arm around him and held both her children close. Josiah drove the wagon in silence, but she caught him glancing back at them. His face was softer than she'd ever seen it, open in a way he rarely allowed. They were going home, all of them, together. The ranch came into view as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. Henry was the first to spot them. He came running from the chicken coop arms, waving, voice carrying across the distance. "They're back, Mama's back." Mrs. Dawson had been watching the children. She'd ridden ahead after testifying, wanting to be there when they returned. She appeared on the porch now, wiping her hands on her apron, her weathered face breaking into a smile. The wagon had barely stopped before Lucy was scrambling down, running toward Henry with her arms outstretched. "Henry, Henry! I'm home!" "Lucy!" He caught her, nearly knocked over by her enthusiasm. "Did you see the judge? Was he scary? Did he have a big hammer like in stories?" "He had white hair and he talked really slow, and he said I get to stay." "I knew it." Henry's voice was fierce. "I told Biscuit you'd come back. She was worried, but I told her." Martha climbed down from the wagon, her legs stiff from the journey, her heart full to bursting. Mrs. Dawson met her at the porch steps. "You won. We won." The older woman pulled Martha into a hug, surprising, considering Mrs. Dawson wasn't the hugging type. "I knew you would. Told everyone in town. Martha Mercer doesn't lose fights that matter. I couldn't have done it without you. What you said in court was nothing but the truth." Mrs. Dawson pulled back, her eyes suspiciously bright. "You're a good woman, Martha. Best I've seen in 30 years of watching people come through this town. Don't you ever doubt that." Martha couldn't speak. She just nodded, throat too tight for words. That night, after Mrs. Dawson had gone home and the children were fed and the house was quiet, Martha stood on the porch and let herself breathe. Really breathe. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, there was no threat hanging over them. No letter waiting to arrive. No strangers coming to tear her family apart. Just peace. Josiah joined her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He passed her one and leaned against the porch rail. "You okay?" "I think so." She wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "It still doesn't feel real. Like I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It's real." "How do you know?" "Because I'm here." He gestured at the ranch, at the mountains, at the stars beginning to appear overhead. "Because this is here. Because your children are sleeping inside safe and warm, and no one can take them. Martha sipped her coffee. It was too hot, but she didn't care. I keep thinking about what the judge said, about blood not being everything. She paused. Do you think he really believed it? Or was he just looking for a reason to rule in our favor? Does it matter? I don't know. Maybe. Josiah was quiet for a moment. My parents died when I was 12, he said finally. Fever took them both within a week of each other. I had no family, no money, no prospects. Should have ended up in an orphanage or worse. Martha turned to look at him. What happened? Caleb Winslow happened. He was a stranger, just a rancher passing through town on business. He saw a hungry kid begging for scraps outside the general store, and something made him stop. He took you in. He took me in, fed me, clothed me, taught me everything I know about ranching, about life, about being a man. Josiah's voice roughened. He wasn't my blood, wasn't even my kind. He was old, I was young. We had nothing in common except that he had something to give, and I needed someone to give it. That's why you said yes to me, that day in the store. That's part of it. He met her eyes. I saw Caleb in what you were asking. The same desperation, the same refusal to give up. And I thought if he could take a chance on me, maybe I could take a chance on you. Martha felt tears threaten again. She'd cried more in the past month than in the past year. Thank you, she whispered, for taking that chance. Thank you for being worth taking it. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars multiply overhead, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into night. Josiah, yeah, I love you. She'd said it before, but this felt different, heavier, more permanent. He set down his coffee, turned to face her fully, took her face in his hands. I love you too, Martha Mercer. You and your children. This family we've built. His voice cracked. I didn't think I'd ever have this again. Didn't think I wanted it, but here you are. Here we are. He kissed her, long and slow and full of everything he couldn't put into words. When they finally pulled apart, Martha was smiling. Here we are, she repeated. Here we are. Spring arrived in earnest over the following weeks. The snow melted completely. The ground softened. The first green shoots pushed through the mud, and the world came alive in ways Martha had almost forgotten. The ranch transformed with the season. Josiah and Will worked from dawn to dusk, repairing fences, clearing pastures, preparing for the calving that would come in May. Martha threw herself into the house and garden, planting vegetables, cleaning out the winter's accumulation, making the place shine. Henry divided his time between the chickens and a new fascination, a calf born early, rejected by its mother, that Josiah had brought into the barn to bottle feed. Henry named it Mud Pie and treated it like a pet, talking to it for hours about nothing and everything. Lucy helped wherever she could, her fear from the trial fading a little more each day. She still had nightmares, sometimes woke up crying that strangers were coming, but they were growing less frequent. And she'd started calling Josiah Pa, without hesitation, as if the word had always belonged to him. One afternoon in late April, Martha found Lucy sitting by Rebecca's grave. She froze at the top of the hill, not wanting to intrude. But Lucy had already seen her. "Mama, come look!" Martha climbed the rest of the way, curiosity overcoming caution. Lucy had gathered wildflowers, the first of the season, small purple and yellow blooms, and arranged them in a careful circle around the grave marker. "I brought her presents," Lucy explained. "Pa said she was nice. He said she would have liked us, so I wanted to give her something pretty." Martha's throat tightened. "That's very thoughtful, baby. Do you think she can see them in heaven?" "I think she can." Lucy nodded, satisfied. Then she reached out and patted the wooden marker gently. "Hi, Rebecca. I'm Lucy. I live in your house now, but I take good care of it. And I take good care of Pa, too. He gets lonely sometimes, but Mama makes him smile." She paused as if listening for a response. "Okay, I'll come back soon. Bye." She stood up, brushed the dirt from her dress, and took Martha's hand. "Ready to go, Mama?" Martha couldn't speak. She just nodded and let Lucy lead her back down the hill. That night, she told Josiah what had happened. His face went through several emotions: surprise, pain, something that looked almost like wonder. She talks to Rebecca. She brought her flowers, introduced herself. Josiah was quiet for a long moment. "Rebecca would have loved that," he said finally. "She always wanted children. We tried, but it never—" He stopped, shook his head. "She would have been a good mother. I'm sorry she didn't get the chance." "Me too." He reached for Martha's hand. "But I think she'd be happy with how things turned out. With you. With the children. With all of it." "You really think so?" "I know so." His voice was certain. "She wasn't the jealous type. She'd want me to be happy. And I am. Happier than I've been in, well, ever. Ever. Ever." He squeezed her hand. "What we have, it's different from what Rebecca and I had. Not better or worse, just different. And that's okay. That's how it should be." Martha leaned against his shoulder. "I feel the same way about Samuel. He'll always be part of me, but this you, it's its own thing. Something new. Something good. Something good." They sat together until the fire burned low, not needing to say anything more. May brought the calving, long days and longer nights. Josiah and Will barely sleeping as they monitored the herd, helped with difficult births, kept predators away from the vulnerable newborns. Martha worked alongside them when she could, learning skills she'd never imagined needing. She delivered a calf on her own one night when Josiah was occupied with another emergency, her hands steady, even as her heart raced. "Not bad for a city girl," Josiah said when he found her afterward, exhausted and covered in mess but triumphant. "I was never a city girl. You know what I mean." "I know." She smiled despite her tiredness. "But I'm a ranch wife now. Better get used to it." Ranch wife. The words felt right in a way she hadn't expected. By June, the worst of the work was over. The herd had grown by 30 calves, the garden was producing vegetables, and the ranch looked better than it had in years. "We're going to make it," Josiah said one evening, looking over the ledger he'd been dreading for months. "Barring disaster, we're actually going to turn a profit this year. Is that unusual? For this ranch, it's unprecedented." He looked up at her, something like wonder in his eyes. "I've been struggling to break even since Caleb died. But this year we're going to be okay. Because of the extra help. Because of you." He set down his pen. "Not just the work, though. Yes, the work, but everything. The way you've organized this house, managed the supplies, stretched every penny. The way Will's become a real hand. Henry's taken over the chickens, even Lucy helps where she can. We're a team now. And teams do better than individuals." Martha felt warmth spread through her chest. "We do okay together." "We do more than okay." He stood cross to where she sat by the fire and pulled her up into his arms. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you showed up on that frozen street with 3 starving children and nowhere to go. I'm glad you said yes when everyone said you wouldn't. Wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I'd said no." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You looked so determined, so fierce, like you'd fight God himself if he got between you and your children." "I would have." "I know. That's what made me say yes. I recognized that look. Remembered having it myself once. When Rebecca was dying. When I knew I couldn't save her but couldn't stop trying." His voice roughened. "It's the look of someone who loves too much to give up. I hadn't seen it in years. Forgot what it felt like. And now I see it every day. In you. In the children. In this life we're building." He kissed her forehead. "And I feel it myself again. Finally." They held each other as the summer evening stretched long and golden around them. Not just surviving anymore. Living. The letter arrived in August. Martha saw the Eastern postmark and her blood ran cold. Another attack. Another attempt to take her children. But when she opened it, she found something unexpected. Dear Mrs. Mercer, I am writing to offer my sincere apologies for the distress my family caused you earlier this year. Upon reflection, and after conversations with my husband, I have come to understand that my actions were misguided. Lucy belongs with you. She always has. I allowed my grief over my late sister and my guilt at having abandoned Samuel years ago to cloud my judgment. I convinced myself that taking Lucy would somehow make amends for past wrongs. It would not have. It would only have created new ones. Please know that we will not pursue legal action again. The Whitfield family formally withdraws any claim to Lucy's custody now and in the future. If you are ever willing, I would welcome the opportunity to write to Lucy, not as a claimant to her care, but simply as an aunt who wishes to know her. However, I understand if this is too much to ask. The decision is entirely yours. With respect, Eleanor Whitfield. Martha read the letter 3 times. Then she sat down heavily and cried. Josiah found her like that tears-streaming letter clutched in her hands, and his face went pale. What is it? What happened? She handed him the letter wordlessly. He read it. His expression shifted from fear to disbelief to something that might have been grudging respect. She's giving up. She's apologizing. Didn't think she had it in her. Neither did I. Martha wiped her eyes. What do I do about the letter writing? Josiah was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to burn this and pretend it never came. Part of me thinks Lucy deserves to know she has family, even family that made mistakes. What about the part that's Lucy's mother? Martha considered. That part says to ask Lucy. She's young, but she's smart. She can decide if she wants to know Eleanor or not. Then that's what you do. She asked Lucy that evening, explaining as simply as she could about the woman who'd tried to take her and who now wanted to be friends. Lucy listened with the seriousness she brought to all important conversations. She was mean before, Lucy said finally. But people can change, right? Pa changed. He was sad and lonely, and now he's not. That's true. Maybe she's not mean anymore. Maybe she just needs someone to be nice to her. Martha's heart swelled with pride. So you want to write to her? I want to try. Lucy paused. But if she's mean again, we stop. Deal. Deal. They shook on it. The first letter went out a week later, 3 sentences in Lucy's careful handwriting, mostly about Biscuit and the new calves, and how pretty Wyoming was in summer. Eleanor's response came 3 weeks after that, warm but careful, asking questions, making no demands. It was the beginning of something. Martha didn't know what yet, but it felt right. Fall arrived with the smell of wood smoke and changing leaves. The garden was harvested, the cellar stocked, the herd moved to winter pasture. The ranch settled into the slower rhythm of the cold months to come. On a crisp October morning, exactly 1 year after Martha had stumbled off that stagecoach with 3 starving children, and no hope, she stood on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched her family. Will was in the corral working with a young horse Josiah had bought him. 14 months had transformed him from a scared boy to a confident young man comfortable in his own skin in ways he'd never been in Missouri. Henry was in the chicken coop talking to Biscuit, collecting eggs with the careful attention he brought to everything. He'd grown inches over the summer and lost the hollow look in his cheeks. He laughed now, often and easily. Lucy was helping Josiah mend a fence near the barn, holding tools and asking questions, and making him smile with her endless commentary. She still had nightmares sometimes, but fewer. And she'd started drawing pictures for Eleanor, sending them with her letters, building a bridge across distance and past hurt. You're thinking hard. Josiah had appeared beside her, his work gloves dusty, his face relaxed. Just remembering. Remembering what? A year ago, standing in that general store begging a stranger to help me. Wasn't begging. You asked. There's a difference. Is there? Begging is giving up your dignity. Asking is keeping it while admitting you need help. He leaned against the porch rail beside her. You never gave up your dignity, Martha. Not once. She smiled despite herself. I would have, if that's what it took. Maybe, but you didn't have to, and here we are. Here we are. She looked at the ranch, this place that had seemed so harsh and foreign a year ago, that now felt more like home than anywhere she'd ever lived. I never thanked you properly, she said. For what? For saying yes. For seeing something in a desperate stranger worth taking a chance on. For loving my children like they were your own. They are my own. I know. That's what I'm thanking you for. Josiah turned to face her fully. You want to know something? What? That day in the store when you asked if I was hiring, I almost said no. Almost walked away. Almost kept my walls up the way I'd been keeping them for 8 years. What stopped you? Your boy, Will. He paused, his voice rough. He was standing there trying to be brave, trying to protect his brother and sister, even though he was just as scared as they were. And I thought that's what I would have done. At his age and his situation, that's exactly what I would have done. So you said yes because of Will. I said yes because of all of you. But Will was the one who reminded me that strength wasn't about being alone. It was about being brave enough to let people in. Martha set down her coffee, took his face in her hands. I love you, Josiah Mercer. I love you too, Martha Mercer. Thank you for letting us in. Thank you for not letting me push you away. They kissed as the autumn sun rose higher and their children's voices carried across the ranch. Not a desperate kiss, not a passionate one. Something deeper, something steadier. The kiss of two people who'd found each other against all odds and built something worth keeping. Later that day, after chores were done and dinner was eaten, Martha sat with her family around the fire. Will was reading aloud from one of Josiah's books, a history of the territory full of stories about settlers and pioneers. Henry was carving a small figure with the knife he'd gotten for his birthday, his tongue poking out in concentration. Lucy was curled in Josiah's lap, drowsy, but fighting sleep. This, Martha thought. This is what I was searching for. Not just survival, not just shelter. Home. She'd found it in the last place she'd expected, with a man who'd sworn never to love again in a territory that demanded everything you had and only sometimes gave back. But it was hers now, theirs, and she'd fight for it until her last breath. Mama! Lucy's sleepy voice broke through her thoughts. Yes, baby. I'm glad we came here. Me too. I'm glad you asked that man for help, even though he was grumpy. Josiah snorted. Grumpy? You were grumpy. Lucy's voice was matter-of-fact. But you're not anymore. Mama fixed you. Did she now? Uh-huh, she fixes everything. Martha laughed. It came from somewhere deep, somewhere healed. Not everything, baby, but I try. That's what you always say. Lucy yawned hugely. Can I sleep now? Yes, you can sleep. Josiah carried her to bed. Will and Henry followed shortly after, worn out from the day's work, and Martha sat alone by the fire for a few minutes, soaking in the silence. Not an empty silence anymore. A full one. The silence of a house that held love and warmth and all the things she'd thought she'd lost forever. When Josiah returned, he sat beside her and took her hand. What are you thinking about? Everything. Nothing. She squeezed his fingers. Just grateful. For what? For you. For the children. For this life we have. She paused. For that frozen day when a desperate woman asked a grumpy rancher for a chance. Not grumpy. Definitely grumpy. He smiled. A real smile, the kind that reached his eyes, the kind that had been rare a year ago and was common now. Fair enough. But you fixed me. We fixed each other. We did. They sat together as the fire burned down and the stars appeared one by one outside the window. Not just surviving, living, loving, home. 1 year ago, Martha Jane Calloway had arrived in Silver Ridge with nothing but 3 children and a prayer. She'd asked a stranger for help, and he'd said yes. She'd built a life where there was none found love, where she'd stopped looking, created family from broken pieces and desperate hope. Now she was Martha Mercer. Wife, mother, partner, home. And nothing, not weather, not distance, not time itself would ever take that away. She'd made sure of it.